Over to you, Chair. We're live.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. Welcome to this remote meeting of the Licensing Committee. My name, for those who don't know, is Councillor Ben Garner, and I'll be chairing today's meeting. So I'd like to start the meeting today by confirming that this meeting of the Licensing Committee, although remote, does meet the requirements of the Council's constitution. And while today's items will be fully discussed as usual, remote attendance requires a few slight changes, as we're all aware of nearly a year into doing this. So just keep your microphones on mute unless invited to speak. If you can keep your cameras on during the meeting, that'd be fantastic, just so anyone watching on the live stream or later in the day or week or month on YouTube is fully aware of who's involved. So as always, just ask for your assistance and patience while we go through the normal online process. And in order to avoid any disruption, should I lose internet connection at my house, I propose we appoint a vice chair who'd step in during my absence. As last time, and I don't think this will be needed, internet in here it's been quite good, he says, touching wood. But as last time, I move Councillor Biffle, just in case that should be needed to chair in my absence, and invite anyone else to second that.
I second that.
Brilliant, and I saw Councillor Garthwaite's hand up as well, so thank you, Councillor Garthwaite. Brilliant, thank you. I'll take a vote and assume silence is approval. I'll just wait in case anyone does object or abstain. Fantastic, thank you. Could I now invite other members and then officers to introduce themselves and mute your microphone afterwards. We'll go alphabetically, and I'll let you lot decide how that's done. So, Councillor Biffle, we'll start with you.
Hi there, Councillor Biffle representing Kirkstall. Thank you.
I can shout people out. Councillor Buckley.
I'm quite working out whether there was somebody before me, actually. Yeah, thanks, Chair. Councillor Neil Buckley, I represent Old Woodley Ward.
Councillor Rick Dales, representing Otley and Eden.
We're getting into it now. Councillor Drinkwater.
Yeah, Councillor Paul Drinkwater, Killenbeck and Seacroft Ward.
Councillor Flynn.
Good morning, Councillor Billy Flynn, Adler Wharfdale Ward.
Councillor Garthwaite.
Good morning, Councillor Al Garthwaite, representing Headingley and Hyde Park Ward.
Councillor Hutchison, and we've not missed you out this time.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Morning, everybody. Councillor Hutchison, Morley North.
Councillor Knight.
Councillor Christine Knight, Wheatwood Ward.
Councillor Lennox.
Morning, Councillor Jess Lennox, representing Crossgates and Winmore Ward.
Councillor Marshall Katong.
Good morning, everyone. It's Councillor Abigail Marshall Cutting, representing Little London, Woodhouse and the City Centre.
Thank you. Councillor Richards.
Good morning, everyone. Councillor Linda Richards, representing Wetherby.
Councillor Wenham, then Councillor Ray.
Good morning, everyone. Councillor Angela Wenham, representing Wronghay Ward.
Councillor Paul Ray, representing Hunslet and Riverside Ward.
Brilliant, thank you. I won't trust people to go alphabetically again because that clearly didn't work, but thank you. And on to officers, starting with John, please. And there's fewer of you, so I'll let you sort yourselves out if that's okay in terms of introductions, but John.
I mean John Grieve or myself, Councillor?
Oh, John McKay, sorry.
Ah, right, okay. In that case, good morning, everybody. John Mulcahy, Chief Officer, Elections and Regulatory. Both licensing sections fall within my remit.
Morning, Nicola Raper from Entertainment Licensing.
Good morning, Matthew Nelson, also from Entertainment Licensing.
I think it might be my turn. Morning, everybody. Andrew White, Taxi and Private Hire Licensing.
Good morning, everyone. Jamie Comer from Legal Services.
Good morning, Mary O'Shea from Legal Services.
Good morning, it's Sue Duckworth from Entertainment Licensing.
Valence, do you want to go next? You need to unmute.
Sorry about that. Good morning. It's Valence Jacobs, taxi and private hire licensing, and I'm a licensing and finance manager. Thank you.
John Grieve, Governance Services, and I'll be clerking in today's meeting.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and nice to see you all. So moving to the agenda, John, can I go to you for the first few agenda items, please?
Thank you, Chair. Under agenda item 1, there were no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. Under agenda item 2, I think we're intending to move into closed session under agenda item 11. That's the regulation 28 report to prevent future deaths. And I think we're going in to closed session under exempt clause 10.42, information which is likely to reveal the identity of an individual. Are members happy to go into a private session at that point?
Sorry, Chair, I think we can consider that at the point that the report is considered, and will be on another ground as well. But members will have to consider that at the time.
So we're considering, sorry, Mary, you were just breaking up a tiny bit there, just for consideration at the time of the item.
Yes. Yeah. Just before we go into that report, we can consider that.
That's fine, thank you. Is that all right, John?
That's fine, Chair. Moving on to agenda item number 3. I'm unaware of any late items of business. Agenda item 4. Could I ask members to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests? Thank you. I don't see any indications from members, so I'll assume there's no pecuniary interests. Apologies for absence. Just the one, Councillor Pat Latty, Chair.
Well, thank you. Cheers, John. On to item number 6, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Can I ask anyone to give a shout out or put their hand up on using the raise hands facility? If I can see everyone, and I can now by pressing that button. I'll just go through page by page, but if anyone does have any comments or corrections, please let me know. So page 1 of the minutes, or page 7 of the agenda pack. So page 2, page 3, page 4, and page 5 or 11 of the agenda pack. Brilliant, thank you. So I'll assume those are correct as nobody's indicated unless you shout out right now. Fantastic. Item number 7, any matters arising that members or officers wish to raise, please put your hands up. That's fine, I'm just looking at the list and the videos. No one's waving their hands up, putting their hands up on Zoom, so I'll take those as no matters arising. Brilliant. On to agenda item number 8, then the annual licensing support. We've got the usual double act of Sue and Andrew, so we'll start with Sue, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is the annual report which we bring to you every year. This includes activities undertaken by entertainment licensing and taxi and private hire licensing. John, Nicola and Andrew are here to answer any specific questions, but I'll briefly go through the entertainment licensing section. So I think the biggest factor in 2020, as it has been for absolutely everybody, has been the coronavirus pandemic. It's affected every aspect of our work. Not only is this shown in the application statistics, which start on page 24 of the report, but also on the guidance support that we've given to our licensed premises. I think our biggest issue really has not been able to see or interpret the guidance and guidelines in advance. We've had sight of the guidelines at exactly the same time as the industry via the gov.uk websites or through the internet via Twitter or BBC News, which has made it very difficult to provide good quality guidance off the bat, especially when we take phone calls almost instantly that there's an announcement on Twitter. So we're scrabbling for the information at the same time as the hospitality industry is, and we're trying to provide professional guidance while still digesting the implications of the restrictions. So it's been frustrating and a difficult year to support hospitality, where we can't give clear and sensible advice immediately, but I believe that we have done our best for hospitality, and we have supported businesses as much as we on that. We have sent out 17 bulletins to the licensing trade since March 26 last year. These started off by sending out emails and letters through the post, and then towards the end of last year we were able to utilize the Gov Delivery newsletter that the council has developed, and we have now set up a mailing list that we encourage all our businesses to sign up to. We have managed to move all of our business now online. We have, as have the businesses themselves, so all our licensing now can be done electronically. And we have just got one member of staff going in once a week into the office to collect post and sort out checks and so on. But to be honest, our posts and checks have dwindled over the last year, and we're doing pretty much everything either via gov.uk website or through email. I think other than that, our office arrangements and stuff are on page 22 and 23 of the report. We've done a fair bit of work with the hospitality industry around guidance and advice. Our enforcement officers have been out doing that all last year, but we've also been able to provide 4 licensing officers for the COVID support line in April to July last year. And we've been assisting other departments with IT support, support with our database, doing COVID-related liaison visits, and providing specific guidance to businesses in the high traffic areas. And we continue to provide support to environmental health with the issuing and processing of fixed penalty notices and so on. So we are doing our very, very best for business. Other than that, licensing processing, as you will see from the statistics that start on page 24, we've seen our total number of applications for new and variation applications remain pretty much the same, which has been a bit of a surprise to us. But we have seen a dramatic reduction in number of temporary event notices that we do, obviously because those events just haven't taken place in the last year. Going on through to page 29, page 30, you will see that we have our complaints have been pretty much static from 2018. with a slight reduction in the number of complaints that we've received. I believe really that what's happened is that the premises have been closed for the majority of last year, which has meant that we've seen a reduction in our usual public nuisance type complaints, but obviously we've seen a massive increase in the number of complaints we've had around COVID compliance. And we've been working with environmental health in helping them with complaint handling. And as you can see on page 31, the statistics are there relating to COVID related actions. We had 3 reviews last year. The information there is on page 31. Looking forward for future projects, we were rather shocked to hear that the Government Digital Services were going to remove all online applications from the gov.uk website from April this year, which obviously was a bit of a shock for all licensing authorities, and we worked very hard with the Government Digital Service to impress upon them that this is not the time to start changing our online processes, and in fact they have now move that deadline to next year, to 2022, and they have promised that they will replace it with something similar. Also this year, we have got the review of the Gambling Act policy, which is on its triennial review, and I've got bringing a report to you later on in this meeting. And we also need to review all the community impact assessments that we have in place, but we are planning to look at that in the summer when things have stabilised a little bit more once hospitality have reopened. But it does give us an opportunity to review our community impact areas, and we will look at that in detail in the summer. And that is it for entertainment licensing, and I'll hand over to Andrew to go through the taxing private hire licensing part of the report.
Wait, thank you, Sue. Can we just stop there just for any questions? Is that all right, Sue, for your section of the report?
Yes, it's fine.
Just in case members have. Any questions from members for Sue or licensing? Al, I can see your hand up physically.
Yes, on page 31, it's regarding TARG, the review of the licence. This was looked at by the subcommittee a couple of weeks ago, and I think we have moved on somewhat. So I would say the review has now been dealt with. Just a point of information, really.
That's fine, thank you. Anything else from members, questions or comments for Sue? I do have one. I know there's the survey at the minute around this for residents around the city centre and local centres, you know, around COVID-19 and just that place shaping that's mentioned in the report. Is there, just in case there are any responses in this non-licensing survey, that's all very general around the city centre, could responses from that feed into the cumulative impact review if you know there's appropriate comments that can be fed into that that come out of this survey that's out in a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. When we come to do that piece of work, we'll bring a report to licensing committee and we'll consider all our data at that point.
Fantastic, that's great. Anything else for Sue from members? That's great, I don't see anyone. Fantastic. On to tax and private hire, Andrew.
Remembering to unmute. I'm in the same room I was last time where the Zoom cut out. So I'm gonna focus as much as I can. I'm assuming I'm gonna know if there's a problem with the audio. But Chair, if it starts to cut out, please let me know. I'm going to refer to my notes as well, just to prompt as well. I've got 6 or 7 key points that I'd like to draw your attention to. And then I think, bearing in mind, we've got quite a lot of content and quite a lot of information. It's very much in the same vein as Sue has just emphasised, really. It's sort of topped and tailed with the impact of COVID, how we've had to adjust, how the trade has adjusted as well. And it's fair to say it's hit the taxi and private hire trade very hard as well. So I'm gonna give you the page numbers of the bundle rather than the report, because I'm assuming you're going to refer to the bundle later on today as well. So the first area I'm going to draw your attention to is the first 2 pages really are 34 and 35 on the impact of COVID. And I think particularly, I'm going to summarize this in sort of 4 or 5 key areas. One is we've got a reduced service offering, very much like entertainment licensing. Our service at the moment is primarily 75% staff working from home, compared to a service where trade members could turn up with an envelope, with a card payment, and walk away half an hour later with a license. It's a much more drawn out process now. We've also seen a significant reduction in the number of journeys that taxis and private hire vehicles are making in Leeds. In a normal year, we estimate probably around 30 million journeys a year are being made by taxi and private hire vehicles. We've currently got a survey out to private hire license holders and taxi license holders, asking them how COVID has affected them. And I think it's fair to say we know that already we've got 700 out of 6,000 drivers who have told us they're not working. So one way or another, they're either on furlough or they're doing something else other than working as a taxi or private hire driver. That's over 10% just said, I'm not working. They've experienced reduced earnings, and also in the city, we've experienced lower air pollution, not all of which is attributed to taxi and private hire vehicles, but I think that's part of the picture on the clean air zone position the council finds itself in now. And a little bit more on that either later this week or later in subsequent licensing committee meetings. The final point, I think, from the impact of COVID is we've sort of reached a point where the modernization of the taxi and private hire fleet really hasn't kept pace in the last year or so. But actually, I just wanted to summarize. I think particularly that's on page 36, the fleet composition, 52% of the Leeds fleet, ULEV, one way or another. So that's petrol, hybrid, full electric or LPG. That's significantly higher than the councils regionally that can actually understand their fleet in that way. So it shows a clear indication of the direction of travel. And in terms of grants or monies that we might be able to release to the trade, we want to make sure we keep that up to continue to impact positively on both air quality and also the number of wheelchair accessible vehicles and larger capacity vehicles as well. So moving on to page 38, there's been an enormous reduction in on-street vehicle inspections. Our vehicle examiners have not done anything like the same number. Our enforcement officers have not done anything like the same number of on-street vehicle inspections as they would do in a normal year. The proportions for vehicles passing and failing actually is very similar. So about 10% suspended or needing significant improvements, and 80% satisfactory, and then a small number in between with if you like minor faults or rectifications. In terms of licensing figures, this page 39. I'm afraid that the numbers are down across the board. So they've gone down for Hackney carriage drivers, down by about 60, down for private hire drivers by about 250, down by about 400 for private hire vehicles, down by 7 for operators, 410 fewer applications. We're now accepting applications, but we're going to find it a challenge to train and test people if we have them in groups of 2 or 3. I don't think we're at the position yet where we can do online assessment. We are exploring different opportunities. We've done fewer refusals, so that's refusing someone a license, that's down by 16. Fewer revocations, that's down by 14, and fewer suspensions, down by 86. So I'm afraid the trend for 2020 is far less impact in terms of decisions, but also a decline in the number of new drivers, new vehicles coming onto the trade in Leeds. Just moving on to the decisions. This is page 39. Much lower level of decisions. I think the number of decisions are so low that it's very hard to think about anything that's statistically meaningful. I think it's easier to look at the suspensions on page 40, and as with a normal year, the top 3 areas are medical, which tends to be for group 2, the sexual allegations or may also be historic sexual reporting. So reports from the police about something that's happened historically also come through, and we will treat that as a complaint to be investigated in that complaint timely way. And motoring offences. So the top 3 areas, but again, far fewer suspensions, around, not quite half as many as the previous year. Going on to complaints, pages 40 to 41, again, fewer complaints, but actually surprisingly, not as much of a drop off in proportion to the number of journeys. And again, this might be that people are reporting, for example, the figure that stood out for me was about license breaches, and that might be concerns about drivers not wearing a mask or even passengers not wearing a mask, and that would get reported to us for someone to say, well, the driver should be reminding passengers to wear a mask, and so on. And then finally, I think in terms of that, just in terms of appeals and casework for appeals, actually pretty much in proportion to previous years, that will be a hangover of the previous court year. The courts are now open. We've got 2 or 3 initial hearings in the next 2 or 3 weeks, but it remains to be seen then if there is a legal backlog in terms of cases, as when we would hear our cases substantively in the courts. So that's a really quick run through. There's lots and lots of information in the report, and I'll stop talking now and see if you've got any questions.
Thanks, Andrew. Really comprehensive in the report, and thank you for the quick summary of it as well. Just on the, there's a part, I checked the page, but around the support to drivers, are you able to just elaborate on the different bits of support from, the point of, and some of that was related to operational issues with the office, I know, but was support in its way. But any other support that's been looked at over the past 12 months for the trade itself?
Yeah, a number of things particularly. I mean, I think we've got a mix of people in the trade, some of whom are very would be very adept at using online, and people have been very quick to pick up online. We moved to a cash-free office in January 2020, and we had very few complaints or problems, even though we'd lined up Leeds City Credit Union as a way of getting people bank accounts and ways of even ways of paying in money. I think it's fair to say that maybe 10% of our license holders do need more help and do need more support in terms of what we can provide. We've also asked them to talk to their associations and talk to their operators as well, or even talk to their family who may be in the trade as well, to make sure. A lot of what our officers have been doing is sitting at home with a headset on, talking a license holder through forms, sending forms back and drawing attention to the extra parts that need to be amended. So lots and lots of sort of coaching and support all the way through in terms of how that goes. I think it's fair to say that I would say the majority of license holders, if we were able to develop as entertainment licensing have done, and if the technology was affordable, if we were to develop online forms, I think they would absolutely be able to negotiate those online forms without difficulties. So we've got certainly an improvement there, which might mean that we're able to do much more online than we were previously. I've actually got a meeting with Newcastle later on today, who've developed some online forms, and we're going to see how their first month of online forms has progressed. In terms of other areas of support, we've developed 2 or 3 different areas of significant operational decisions where we either relaxed or varied some of our policies just to enable existing license holders to stay working. So April, May and June last year, we implemented various significant operation decisions, including automatic renewal of licenses for a period of up to 3 months, and then we would do the background checks and the other checks retrospectively, if you like. It's fair to say that in a very small proportion, we then found issues of concern to do with driving licenses or DBSs. But again, the vast majority of those cases, we were able to renew without any difficulty, and then we've picked up the areas of compliance that were outstanding. For the period between June and December, because we weren't inspecting vehicles in significant numbers, we allowed vehicle owners, if their vehicle had previously been inspected and was in good condition, and if it had a very good HPI or MOT history, we allowed them to go and get a vehicle MOT certificate and show it to us instead of us inspecting it. So we were able to do that. We also allowed vehicle owners to fit what I would call temporary screens between the driver and the passengers in the rear. as a way of reducing transmission of COVID, rather than the permanent screens that need inspection. And I would be very, very expecting there that our inspection would hold up the installation of those screens. We don't know quite how many of those screens have been have been put in place because we haven't inspected all of those vehicles. I've had very few complaints around that. We've seen one or two areas of screens that look like sort of waterproof pram covers and things like that. But on the whole, most of the screens seem to have been very sensibly installed. Something that I refer to, I'll get the exact page reference for everybody. So it's at the bottom of page 35 of the bundle, or page 19 of the report, is the free licensing grant for owners of vehicles. And I've actually, just while we started the meeting, seen the delegated decision for a grant as well from the council's additional restrictions grant. So once I've digested the delegated decision, I'll issue a late item or a late report to update members of the scale of the free, both free vehicle licensing grant, which comes from held over Clean Air Zone monies, and then the free driver licenses. If I can, and if the web pages are done, I'll also provide a link to the web page as well, so we can share the report or the web links with trade members as well. I know there'll be a lot of interest in that. In terms of the financial scale of that support, the free licensing grant is a free license for a vehicle. So it's the license for the vehicle. If the vehicle needs an inspection, it's a free initial inspection of the vehicle as well, and that's worth up to £250 around that, together the license and the inspection as well. And each vehicle owner who's got a compliant or an eligible vehicle would be able to have probably up to 3 vehicle licenses and 3 vehicle inspections. In brief, what we're looking at, and there'll be a press release later today, and then I'll send the report as well. The way we're looking at license support from the additional restrictions grant is twofold, really. One is to give current drivers the chance to have 3-year driver's license, which really removes the barriers for the driver side in terms of financially and applying for a license. They would still need to have up-to-date DBS checks and DVLA checks and so on. But it also gives them the chance, if they live in a Leeds area, to access further support from additional restrictions grant, but they would need to evidence significant operating costs, and that's one area where I'll make sure that I use exactly the terms that economic development have provided. The other area of support that we're developing linked to the Clean Air Zone, and I think we're going to announce this later on this week as well, is the chance to try before you buy a Nissan Leaf to demonstrate electric vehicles. So I think we've licensed 4 Nissan Leafs yesterday, and there'll be a further 5th one. And again, there'll be some communication just to give current drivers, people who don't currently own electric vehicles, the chance to test drive for a few weeks an electric vehicle. I know it's quite a lot there. There'll be a report.
That's quite good, Andrew. Thank you.
There'll be a report clarifying all of this. I just need to make sure my report is kept up to date with the either the revisions or the clarifications. In terms of the overall scale of the support to the Leeds private hire trade and taxi trade, I think that's it's around £5 million. In terms of the targeted support just for Leeds residents who work in the taxi and private hire trade, I think that's around 2.5 million on top of that, and that's about the focus on economic development for Leeds residents. So there, in that case, then drivers who work in Leeds but don't live in Leeds would not be eligible for that. It's the same for other areas of self-employment income support. But as soon as I can, I'll finalise the report and share that with members, and we'll share it with stakeholders as well.
Yeah, briefing note on those new support schemes would be really appreciated. Thank you, Andrew. Al, your hand went up first, and then over to Neil as well.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to congratulate officers on all this work, which often working from home means that you're working under very difficult conditions and you don't have the in-person support of colleagues. And I think it's brilliant that we see so many positive developments, especially around the clean air, but also in other ways as well. I noticed that under suspensions, that really the only one that had actually gone up, although I know the figures are low, are the sexual offences. And the numbers are probably too low to draw any conclusions. And I did hear about the reports, including historic offences, which may account for this. But given that there were, as we've been told, many fewer journeys in 2020 because of the pandemic, I would say this is something to watch. And I don't know whether officers can have any more to say on that matter. Quite possibly not.
I think in terms of because obviously I've been reviewing what we've been doing during lockdown, Councillor Garthwaite, to check and double check. And even though we haven't been doing the same number of on-street enforcements, the historical information, and I would this is a broad estimate. I would suspect that out of those suspensions for sexual offences, I would suspect that maybe half are historical. That still means then there's 8 either sexual offences or alleged sexual offences that took place within the last period, and they might not all have been in 2020. Someone may have complained about something that happened in 2019. I wouldn't regard that as historical. But we do have information on the current levels of suspension, the current license holders who are suspended, and it is one of those areas where almost all of the other areas of concern that would warrant an immediate suspension because the allegations are so serious, and particularly when it comes to that suggestion from central government that we should revoke first and ask questions afterwards, it would give us cause for concern about those. But I would suspect that maybe half of those 16 are historical. But what we'll do is I'll prepare an anonymized or an overview of each of those. I know I've done that in previous years. I know that I think from one year the numbers went up significantly, and we did a sort of drill down on those cases. So I'm very happy to it certainly caught my attention as well, Councillor.
Thank you. That is good. It is of course positive that those who experience such things feel able to report them, which I think is definitely a good thing, which may not have been so much the case in the past. But a fuller report would be most welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Al. Thanks, Andrew. Neil.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just 2 quick questions, or a question and a comment, actually. Andrew mentioned screens, and when we were allowed to visit hospitality and that kind of thing, I used taxis or private hire quite a bit at that particular time, as I used to do normally. And I noticed these screens quite a lot. And as he said, most of them seem pretty good and pretty sensible and quite well put in. And I just wanted to make sure that when all this is officially over, that they can just carry on with those, or for that matter, take them out if they want, rather than have to go to all the expense of having some kind of officially sanctioned installation. So that's question number 1. And then just quickly on the subject of the electric vehicles free test, Andrew mentioned the clean air zone. Now, unless I've missed something, the clean air zone is off, isn't it? We're not going to have that. So if you could just come back on those, please.
Yeah, first, I'm just checking my microphone's back on. Yeah. So firstly, screens. What we've done for the support to the trades, that we said if a vehicle owner wants to fit a screen, we won't make them choose the screen installers that are approved by us and crash tested. They can fit something temporary without us having to inspect it. What we've said is the next time we inspect the vehicle, we will make a decision with the vehicle owner as to whether that screen, if it's still in place, then whether that screen meets our standard or not. We have a rolling program of screen approval, and we've got, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 current providers who are approved. What I think we will do is we will get the people looking at the vehicles to see if the screen design meets our standard, and if so, they can carry on with with that screen if they feel it's helpful. If it's clearly temporary and clearly less than ideal, or is going to impair visibility and so on, then it needs to be removed. What I think we don't know is maybe the damage or the disruption to the vehicle it's going to cause by removing those screens, and I think that's the key question that we're going to focus on. But we've not made screens compulsory. We've got 2 or 3 or 4 approved screen providers. We haven't made people wait in line for a long wait for a vehicle to be inspected, either in our garage or on street, before we approve. I have to say, when we made that delegated decision, significant operational decision, we didn't think we would still be here almost a year later, still talking about COVID. We thought we were talking months. So I think we need to revisit our approach to that, because I think we will be approaching the point where those vehicles will be inspected with screens in situ, temporary screens in situ, and that will be a good opportunity to determine exactly as you've said, is it safe, is it suitable, and so on. So that's the position around screens. In terms of electric vehicles, and the report that I'll share on the back of the decision will clarify this. And I want to be very clear. This is a decision that's been made by the directorate that the Clean Air Zone team sit in. So the Clean Air Zone has been, I was going to say abandoned. Maybe abandoned isn't the right word, but it's not. We're not progressing with the Clean Air Zone. As part of the dialogue with central government about air quality in Leeds, Leeds City Council has agreed to retain some money from the Clean Air Zone. So rather than return it to central government, to keep hold of that money, and that money would then be used to carry on improving air quality in Leeds, in order to prevent the likelihood of us needing a Clean Air Zone in 2 years' time, maybe when economic development, economic activity reaches a previous level. So what we've agreed to retain is £1.8 million in terms of free licensing for either compliant, so ultra low emission vehicles, or those wheelchair accessible or larger vehicles that are seen as being in the public good and we're going to be exempt from the Clean Air Zone. So that's wheelchair accessible vehicles. And then the ones seating what the Clean Air Zone said 5 to 7 passengers. So we've kept the size of those vehicles. So the larger vehicles will also qualify here for free licensing. And we estimate that probably affects around 2,600, 2,700 out of the 5,000 or so vehicles. So it's just over half of the vehicles. There's additional monies that the Clean Air Zone team have retained from central government, and they will also be able to issue what are called transitionary grants. So they are able then, if someone either hasn't got a compliant or an eligible vehicle, they will also be eligible then to apply for some grant. And the sort of thing I would think they have in mind is maybe fitting something like an LPG conversion, which would take a petrol vehicle from being non-compliant to being compliant as long as it's properly installed. So particularly in terms of electric vehicles, they're part of the picture, but also so is LPG, and so are petrol hybrid. We've got other projects going on around things like try before you buy. We've also got a project around electric charge points in West Yorkshire to try and set up the infrastructure to make it more amenable for people when they're changing their vehicle to consider an ultra low vehicle as an alternative. I have to say, when I first looked at the composition of the fleet, it was something like 75% diesel, and now it's less than half diesel. So it shows the progress the city's made. I would say primarily by the trade. The trade have changed 2,000 vehicles and maybe only used 400 or 500 grants or loans. So this is a lot of credit to the vehicle owners in Leeds, and they've made this with some help and support from the council.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Neil and Andrew. Any other questions from members for Andrew? No hands up there, so thank you very much. Anything else at all from members or officers on final comments on the annual report?
Sorry, Chair. The one more thing I might want to draw attention to is just to say, I didn't really want to go into much detail today, but we covered it at some length last time, is the statutory guidance. and particularly the coordination with the other West Yorkshire authorities. So I've sent a copy of our annual report to the other licensing authorities, or the taxi leads in the other licensing authorities, and we're going to pick up that work and just to see where we've got areas in common across West Yorkshire and with City of York as well. I've also started to make contact with some of the core cities. I'm finding it quite hard at the moment to get the right contacts. I haven't forgotten about the things we talked about at the end of January. We're also arranging the first of what I think might be many working group meetings to look at the outstanding areas of policy development. So that's arranged for I think it's a week today. So we'll see how that goes on Zoom as well, and we'll pick up as well. So I haven't mentioned that in the annual licensing report, but that may be the next area of taxi business that you get to hear about, other than the report that I'll share as soon as I've made sure that my report aligns with the grants and funding that we just previously discussed.
Thank you, Andrew. And I know it is mentioned in the report about a couple of working groups that were happening this time last year, in fact almost exactly, which are getting back up and running again. So thank you to the department for sort of getting back up and running with those. So members will be contacted in due course about those working groups that have been paused. Nicola, I can see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As Sue mentioned, it's all COVID related, I'm afraid. There's been a lot of frustration with the regulations and the guidance which have been coming out over the past 12 months. A lot has been very last minute and the two documents don't always correlate. So there's been a lot of head scratching and confusion, liaising with other authorities and the LGA, etc. In order to get our practices correct and to be operating what we believe is in accordance with the regulations, if not the guidance. But just looking ahead, as soon as the roadmap was announced, we're now dealing with many inquiries from premises who are wanting to utilise outdoor areas for drinking, which they can start to do so from the 12th of April. So at the moment, we had a working group last year involving Key Council and Public Services looking at outdoor drinking, appropriate areas that can be used, the consequences for outdoor drinking as well, i.e. nuisance to residents. So those meetings are about to commence. And so hopefully we'll have a good system in place for dealing with street cafe inquiries and, as I mentioned, the consequences of outdoor drinking that can have on the communities as well. I don't know if members have any questions about how things are looking for the future, particularly for licensed premises.
Thanks, Nicola. Any comments or questions from members on that? It's one of those changing situations and well, although linked to the taxi and private hire a little bit different in this, there's with the lockdowns there's periods, on and off periods, as we've seen in the last year for the bars and pubs and that, which is a little different to taxi and private hire, although there is that link to the nighttime economy. Andy, I saw your hand up first, and then Al.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I know that with the street cafe licenses, there was almost like an expedited application for when the bars were opening on the 4th of July last year. I think it was like a 7-point check that they had to do. Do we know if that is still in place and if that will also be extended? Because I think the government relaxed the rules until March. Do we know if that's still in place?
Yes, that's the discussion that we're having this week, but yes, it will be extended.
And the timeframes on getting the street cafe licenses, is that also been speeded up or expedited?
Yes, I think they're looking at, well, they're going to approve them as soon as possible, but I think they're looking at a 7-day process period as opposed to, I think it's usually 28 days.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Al.
Yes, I know that pavement cafes, restaurants, especially if licensed, can cause problems, but I also think they're very positive in that they really give life and animation, particularly in the city centre, which the worrying thing can be that it's just an empty place, which makes people feel strangely less safe sometimes. So I know how popular the chairs and tables were in Briggate, and people went on sitting at them well into the autumn when it was really quite cold, but they were very popular and give an opportunity for people to get together. So I understand as well that it's going to be cheaper for the for businesses to have such things. And finally, really, my question is, all of that is comment, the working group, is that an internal one, or are members being asked to sit on that working group?
No, Councillor, when I say working group, it's an officer working group to consider the street cafe applications, and it involves ourselves, highways, city centre management and the police and environment department.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Nicola. Billy.
Thanks, Ben. I couldn't quite hear what Andrew asked a few minutes ago about the street cafe, so apologies if he did cover it. The sound isn't very good at my end. There was something on the news, on Sky News yesterday. It was the Black Bull in Otley were complaining bitterly about the additional licence money that Leeds Council were looking for outside sort of training, outside trading. Is that the case, Nicola? I mean, surely we're not going to impose further charges on the entertainment industry when they've been shut for the best part of 12 months.
We certainly aren't in licensing. So whether they are referring to the street cafe application process, so there will be a fee for that, yes, if you've not had one previously.
And what would the fee be?
I'm not too sure, Councillor, because it's not our service.
Could we find out?
Yes, yeah.
Just seems a bit counterproductive if we're trying to encourage business to get back into business, and yet we're effectively fining them for the for the pleasure of doing so.
When you say fining, it'll be an application process fee for for the administration.
Whatever it is, it's a fee for something that they've not been able to earn money on for the last 12 months or so. It just seems, I'm not criticising you, Nicola. Yeah. It just seems counterproductive that we're putting any kind of a charge onto the entertainment industry when they've been out of business for the best part of 12 months. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I'm not too sure if, for example, the premises you talk about have had street cafe permission before, because it may well be that it'll just continue operating. It'll roll over into the new system.
I think Rick may have something to add about that.
Yeah, go on, Rick.
Yeah, I'm happy to perhaps have a bit more of a fuller conversation with Billy offline. There's more to this than meets the eye, and it's not to do with licensing. If that's enough of an answer for now, because I wouldn't really want to discuss individual things on the on a public forum, but I'm very happy to have a word with Billy. But to my knowledge, it's not, and I could be wrong, but to my knowledge, it's nothing to do with licensing. There's a planning issue, and also I wouldn't believe everything you read in some of the national paper, considering that the story said that Otley's in North Yorkshire.
Yeah, I noticed that. It wasn't just Otley, though. There were also licensed premises down the country who were similarly complaining.
So let's not get into an argument about where bits of Yorkshire are. But yeah, thanks, Rick. That's really useful. And Nicola, I think just a quick email or note to members around the street cafe licenses and any application fee and what that fee is for. And as I suspect you are right, it's the administration fee that any license would have, and whether that's a one-off or for current premises that have a current street license or any other type of license, that'd be really useful for members as well. Because I suspect we'll start getting lots of queries on this, and some more bits online or in the press as well as premises can reopen over the next few months or year. So that'd be really welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm sure city centre management will be drawing up, they'll be refreshing the process from last year when we had a similar situation. So I'll send the guidance round if that's okay, and then members have it for if they're dealing with any local inquiries.
Well, thank you. Cheers, Nicola. Anything else on the annual report, or any final comments or questions? Brilliant, thank you. I think what the report does show is just the amount of work that you know, as Al said, you know, all the staff in entertainment licensing and tax in private hire have been dealing with over the past year. I know there's some very few, but some members of either trade and the public indeed that see lots of working from home and say, oh well, nothing's happening, but this just shows the amount of work that's been done in really difficult circumstances. So thank you to everyone who's in both departments, and really good report, so thank you for that. On to the next item, which Sue, are we back onto you of the review of the Gambling Act, call for evidence?
Thank you, Chair. This is a follow-up report from the one that we looked at in February. The government has announced its intention to review the Gambling Act 2005. They issued a call for evidence with the closing date of the 31st of March, and we have compiled a response on behalf of Leeds City Council with our colleagues in financial inclusion and public health, which is at page 51 of the report onwards. I don't intend to go through it. It's pretty research heavy. We're quite lucky in Leeds that being a large authority and having the large casino has prompted us to do quite a lot of research into gambling, especially around children and vulnerable people. And again, we're very lucky that we have got the Northern Gambling Clinic sited in Leeds. And so we have access to information that other authorities don't have. And that's basically what we've put in our response. We've concentrated on the questions that we can provide a good, meaty, substantial response to, and we have left the other questions for other authorities and other businesses to deal with. And that is it from page 51 to page 58 of your report pack, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Sue. Yeah, I thought this would be, and as we discussed at the January meeting, end of January, good to put in front of members again. I hope everyone's had a good read of the response there. Are there any questions or comments on any of that? Al? You're still on mute, Al, sorry.
Yes, a comment really, just to say that I was impressed by the thoroughness of this research. It seems to have covered a great many different areas, particularly in terms of young people and vulnerable groups. And I was quite concerned to read some of the responses from different groups. And I very much agree with the comments on page 57 about wanting to have more control over what is allowed, and also on question 43 that removing the aim to permit requirement in the Act, which the requirement quoted at licensing hearings by operators and their agents is a strong reason why committees are required to grant the premises licence, and it being difficult, therefore, to refuse such applications despite strong local evidence of the potential harm to vulnerable people. And this has been highlighted in different subcommittees and things that have come before ourselves as a committee over the years, which I'm well aware of. And I think that I really agree with all these recommendations and just hope that the government will also take note. So thank you.
Thanks, Al. Yes, and we see it on this committee all the time, whether it's gambling or taxing private hire or all the other parts of licensing, entertainment licensing as well, that sometimes what's in the legislation inhibits what can be done locally. So I hope some of this is listened to as part of the review. Thank you. Any other comments or questions from members? Can we take it as read that we give our support to the response as it is then to be submitted? Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks everyone. So from the sort of future of gambling to the current gambling acts that we still have to review every now and again. Sue or Nicola, over to you again, just on the review of the statement of licensing policy.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I won't labour the point on this one. We have to review the statement of licensing policy every 3 years. That is written into the legislation, and unfortunately, we have to review it this year, despite the fact that we can see potential change to the legislation happening next year or the year after. We have to follow a budget and policy framework, and therefore we have a fairly rigid timetable, which I have described at 3.2 of the report. We are currently in the process of reviewing the existing policy, and we will bring it to licensing committee in May to approve the consultation with the public, which again is a requirement of the legislation. I think overall we don't intend to do a wholesale change to the policy. There are some learning that we want to include from recent licensing subcommittees, especially around operating schedules and potential conditions related to local area risk assessments and our own risk matrix. But we wanted to give members the opportunity to provide input if they wanted to, but I would suggest that we could do this via email. I'm aware that members have got a number of quite time-consuming tasks ahead of them over the next couple of months, least of all a load of working groups for taxing private hire. So if any interested members wanted to be involved in the conversations around the review, the initial review of the policy, I very much would appreciate some contact from them, and we can involve them in our meetings. Other than that, it's just really for licensing committee to consider the best way to provide that steer during that initial review, and we will be bringing this whole thing back to you in May. So any questions?
Thanks. So I suppose that's any questions or comments on the process of how members can be involved with this, and of course the more meaty bits will come in May regardless. But are there any questions or comments on how we can be involved with the initial bits of this? Al?
I agree that being involved by email is a better way forward than having to attend more meetings, especially at this time of year. And I'm happy to, if emailed, give my comments and read everything thoroughly. Thank you.
Anyone else either agree or probably more to disagree? That's fine. I'll take that as given. So yeah, we're happy to see if you're able to get something to members when the time's right, and then we can all pull it in via email or I'll give you a ring or whatever as appropriate, and then we'll see this back in May. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Hope we're all supporting with that. Well, on to the final item for today then. And we've got Nicola for this one, just the Regulation 28 report to prevent future deaths. So this is a report from the Wakefield coroner. Nicola.
Thank you, Chair. This is a report concerning the receipt of a Regulation 28 report to prevent future deaths, and it's following a fatality involving a 17-year-old person at the Leeds Festival in 2019. A working group has been established to consider the report. The membership of the group including members of the licensing committee and a range of council and public services. with the main focus of the working group to consider what action can be taken to alleviate the coroner's concern for young persons attending the festival unaccompanied by an adult. The working group has met on 2 occasions, and in a moment I'll pass you over to Matthew, who will provide a summary of the actions to date. But members will be asked today to agree either for the chair to respond to the senior coroner on behalf of the licensing committee by the agreed deadline of the 23rd of April, or alternatively for the matter to be brought back to licensing committee in April. Before I do, however, hand over to Matthew, could I firstly ask the chair and members whether it is necessary for the public to be excluded from this element of the meeting to allow for detailed discussion of what could include personal confidential information? Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Nicola. So there have been 2 working group meetings on this so far. There is some personal data and things that probably shouldn't be discussed in public forum, but Mary, I'll defer to you for that more legal advice on that. So yeah, I think going to private session for this part would be advisable. Mary.
Yes, Chair. The basis upon which the committee can move into private session and in relation to the report is 2 grounds really. First of all, the information that would be of the discussion is likely to reveal the identity of an individual. But secondly, that the information relating to any action taken or to be taken in connection with the prosecution, investigation or prosecution of crime might be discussed. And if members feel that in all the circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information, that's for members to consider. And if members agree with that, then they can move into private session.
Thank you, Mary. You're just breaking up at the beginning, but I think we got to the you weren't breaking up when it came to the important bits, which is the legal pieces. Thank you. Probably easier. Do any members disagree with a private session to discuss this a bit further? It's probably the easier way to do this. Thank you. I can't see any hands going up, anyone waving particularly on screen. And thank you, Mary, for clarifying the legal basis for that. John, could we do the necessary sort of, and Laura, the administrative bits in the background to get us to private session? We are still streaming, so we'll go into adjournment in a way, but in fact it's into private session. And John and Laura, are we able to sort that?
Thank you, Chair. Just before we do go into private session, we've got Valens and we've got Richard Perrott on the call. Do you both need to be going into this private session? I'm not getting any response.
No, I'm not needed for this section, so I will leave the meeting.
I'm not needed either. I'll leave the meeting as well.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ralph.
So Andy, can you move everybody into the breakout room, please?
Hi everybody, I'll just wait to double check that everyone is back in the main session, but thank you to members and officers there for that discussion in private session. Just counting up on screen, sorry. I'm sure John is doing the same.
Chair, I think Councillor Wenham's missing. No, she's coming in now.
Brilliant. We've got all members back in then. Mary and Jemmy here. Brilliant. Well, thank you everyone for that discussion. Going to the recommendations of item 11, which has a reminder to anyone who is watching, the Regulation 28 reports with future deaths with regards to the unfortunate death of a young girl, Anya, in 2019 at Leeds Fest. Going to the recommendations, are we happy that we bring the matter back to the licensing committee next month, so in April? And I think that'll be is that the 6th of April?
6th of April, Chair.
Yeah. Are we happy as a committee of members for that to happen? Just to doubly confirm. I'll take silence and no frantic waves at cameras has been in agreement with that. Thank you, everyone. So I'm just trying to get back to the agenda. Brilliant. So, agenda item 12, date and time of next meeting. No, I should have gone down to that rather than asking you, John. Tuesday, the 6th of April at 10 AM. And of course, that'll be remote again. I hope that's okay with everyone. And that concludes the meeting today. So thank you, everyone, for your patience there. A bit of a longer meeting, of course, still only our second full meeting of licensing committee for 12 months in remote attendance as well. So thank you, everyone, for your patience with the details of remote attendance. That's really different from in person. I'll see you all next month.